fáilte go dtí an episód sa Ceis na Talán. Podcrail faoin Nghaoileán agus a star de aine atá fistrop faoi our gadribh léithí agus a role in our bhénúlacht. Welcome to The Language Question, a podcast about the Irish language and its history for anyone curious about our relationship with it and its role in our identity. Maris Gnach, bí cinnte a chlárú ag thelanguagequestion.com/resources chun de acmhaní fálam to saor an aisce a fháil agus a bheith ar an eolas faoi gachród atá ar siúl ar an show. As usual, please be sure to sign up at thelanguagequestion.com/resources to be sure to get your complimentary, valuable learning resources and to stay up to date, upcoming episodes, guests, and to receive exclusive content. Peish Gale, Shulling, Gamwena Tu Sogdas. Anyhow, here goes. I hope you enjoy it. Nuala Ní Dhomhnaill is a former Ireland professor of poetry and has recently been described by a subsequent occupant of the Ireland Chair of Poetry, Paul Muldoon, as the most important Irish language poet of this era. She was one of the Inti School of Poets. Her first collection on Dalig Drain appeared in 1981, which has been followed by an extensive body of work of poetry, essays and plays. She is one of the most, if not the most, translated of Irish language poets, something which has led to her having a huge international audience. She has won numerous national and international awards, and she is a member of Ace Dána. And Nuala, a cara, tá fáilte is fitheót ar an show agus tám Harveh buíoch díot as a bhelin.
I'm Anna Hauser and so leis. I'm delighted to be with you.
Well, Nuala Ní Dhomhnaill, it is just such an honour and a privilege and an immense joy to have you here with us. I mean, the actual name of the podcast is Ceis na Talán, in honour of your wonderful poem of that name. And to be able to speak to you here today is an opportunity to meet one of my all-time heroes, not only Irish language heroes, but all-time heroes. So it really is a tremendous pleasure. Nuala, what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, to start, as I do with all of our guests, is to go back to the beginning, if you like, and to your experience of the language growing up and how what that looked like for you and what the language was like for you as a child and your entry into the language in your life.
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, I'm a Lancashire lass. I was 5 before I learned Irish. I mean, I remember England very well. I mean, I remember my father, and I remember the fact that we went to see a nest of swans. Yeah, and that the male swan was protecting his own, but he went for me with a long neck, which was threatening me, and I roared, and ever since then, I don't really like swans. I'm always afraid of them. You know, they might do something to me. And these are my memories of England, and they're very proper and everything. So they sent me to Ireland to my aunt when I was 5, and my father was working as an obstetrician, or basically the local doctor. He came down every 6 weeks when he could get time off. So he came down the first 6 weeks and we were talking all English. And then another 6 weeks later he came down and we were speaking all Irish. And he couldn't understand what happened. It must have been that what psychologists call the language opening. Mm-hmm. And that it was that time. And suddenly we were all speaking Irish. And from then on, when we went to live in Tipperary, in Nina, he would come home in the evening and he'd say, "I know much beer, I sure think so. And there's too much English going on in this house." And we'd all speak Irish. And so there was no great difficulty or anything about it. It was just a normal way of being, and that's the way it continued.
Would your parents have spoken Irish to one another in England?
Yeah, they would have spoken Irish all the time, yeah. So they were all, especially my father was particularly Irish loving. My mother wasn't so much so. She thought that English would be good for you professionally and everything else. And she didn't put put any great resistance on us speaking English. But my father didn't like it. So we all switched to Irish. It's no big deal one way or another.
And then when you were sent then at the age of 5, you went back to West Kerry to Ventry, yeah?
Yeah, them to
Carritzrand.
yeah.
You describe wonderfully in the essays about I think you had a particularly strong relationship with your aunt's husband, Thomas Murphy, who was
He was a great storyteller.
just around that and language. I mean, you spoke, or I mean, one of the things that I continually kind of reflect on, and indeed your beautiful poem Keshnatong, and you write in the essays about, you know, this kind of, it was almost this mad thing that you decided to start writing in a language that could be dead before you were. I think you described it in as the time.
Oh yeah. Lots of people.
And how did you?
That, yeah.
How do you feel reflecting back on that now, for a life spent with that that as your life's work? How does that feel to you now?
I feel delighted. I mean, I feel that I'm part of the resurgence of Irish as it is happening here, like you through this podcast. I mean, so many things are happening in Irish now that didn't happen 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and this is part of it. And I feel I'm a part of it too. And you know, if it's a great feeling of, well, you know, besides bringing up kids, this was the great thing I did in my life. No, even though in Turkey, I taught Turkish in the university, and there in the Middle East University, and all sorts of things there. They were all wonderful, but there was no end in sight. You know, with Irish, you can feel that not that there's an end in sight, but that there's something bigger than you going on. And I like,
But I mean, yeah, and that is something, because it was obviously something that you were extraordinarily driven to. I mean, because I'm just thinking of that move that you made. You had moved to Turkey. You were living there with young kids and your husband, and then you made this huge move to come back, to move to West Kerry and to start, you know, to really live the life of a writer through Irish in poetry. I mean, that was a huge sacrifice, and kind of, if you like, you know, that took a huge amount of courage to do that. Can you remember what was motivating you then to take such a big step in your life?
well, I noticed that I was writing, Irish and English, but I noticed that I got much more fun when I was writing in Irish. So it was a kind of a charge with it. Kind of a charge going with it that didn't happen with English today, or, you know, all the other languages that I got aware of and got, you know, reasonably good at. Like Turkish, for instance, we talk in the house quite often in Turkish, and the switch from Irish to Turkish to English is no great deal, you know. I'd say something in Irish to the kids, and they answer me in Irish. You know, damn nonsense about it being a minority language and things like that. I don't think so. I think the time will come where English and Chinese and a couple of languages like that will be international languages. They're for all the world to know. People will learn them, and then, but at the same time, they keep their own language, you know, for themselves. You know, I'm still learning Irish. I mean, I still have books, and I look up the books every day. And, you know, it's a constant reminder of something bigger than myself, which I'm glad to be part of.
Yeah, because I'm reminded also of you speaking repeatedly about your particular interest in the National Folklore Collection and the Department of Folklore, which I think you've spent an awful lot of time in, and just talking about this mine of treasure or ore that is almost limitless in terms of the what's there to be uncovered. Is that something that you still have an interest in?
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the moment, because I have trouble with my legs, I can't go into the Department of Folklore every day. But I used to go in. We used to get a babysitter from 2 to 5 or whatever it was, so that I could go in folklore material there, and I would prize myself with wonderful things that I just places. There is one of the ones that I still Namara, what's it called again? I was running off with
A particular drawer, things
particularly interesting because that's where I got the whole idea for the whole idea of another wayward kind of language, which is not English. And then English folklore we know so much from fairy tales and everything, but then there's this separate one which is Irish, and it's full of marvelous material.
And also, though, I think because the idea of the Maroka, you have this wonderful imagery of the sort of the Mer people who are forced up out of the I think you described it as the amniotic fluid that they would have lived in, and they're forced up onto the dry rock. And if you like, sort of the water recedes and they're left there, but they don't have the language to actually understand what it is that they're missing.
I know that I feel that's still true for a lot of Irish people, and then an awful lot of Irish people who go abroad and who have forgotten their Irish background. I mean, I do think there is a kind of a gap or a lapse or something in the Irish character because of that. And I think it's it would be to everyone's advantage that the more that we discover it and the more we talk about it and that sort of thing. And you can do it in Irish as well as in English.
But you talk about a thing now and about what's happening with the language now and so on, and it is fantastic. I was actually just reading about President Catherine Connolly's appointment to the Council of State today or yesterday, and how she's the Irish language activist Linda Irvine has been appointed, and she has it really feels that her whole presidential campaign, I think, was the resurgence of the language was a really big part of that. But I'm thinking also back to your day and Inti, and I'm particularly thinking about, and I mean, I certainly was way before my time, but there was a famous evening in the Vienna Woods Hotel, I think, back in the early days in the launch of Inti, where there were thousands of people present for this kind of happening, if you like, in relation to the language and poetry. That was a huge thing then, in that particular time in Irish life, wasn't it?
Really, oh yeah, it was really true. I mean, I still remember that occasion, in spite of the fact that my memory is not what it used to be. It was like as if the world had turned to Irish. It's not that I have any dislike of English. Actually, I love English. I mean, I love translations in English from every country under the world. And what keeps me happy now is translations, novels, and written in other languages.
And you had the Maroke poems that came, and I associate them with kind of the 50 the 50-minute Mermaid. And of course, Paul Muldoon's translations of those poems. But prior to that, you had another mermaid poem on Maiden. Oh yeah.
Oh yes. Well, that's before I heard of the word Maroke. At the beginning, I thought it was a kind of was a fairy Sheol that had to do with rivers and things like that. because I'd read all that stuff. And then I found that, I was on the beach one day, and I found a strange thing about it to Thomas Murphy, who was looking for a form of worms that fish like. And he was going, getting his stuff ready for fishing. And I said, what is this? And I was Shin Manvara. Tá cín Farivan coma, agus sé an animatar Mam Roch. So then I went looking for Roch, and then I found then it meant see people. So great. I had a wonderful discovery, and then I went with that. It's often the way the things strike you. And another time we was talking to Thomas Murphy, we were talking about the places that were depopulated when the Cooper came in as the main owner, and he said Cobham Nadina, and they said, oh, some of them went to the Elon, and some of them went here, and some of them went there, and some other were afraid of Marucha. So they went to the Blasket Island, and they changed their name to whether they wouldn't be followed by this same people, the sea people. And then I gradually began to play with that, and gradually a whole pile of poems came out of it. But the most important thing was, I said to Thomas, and then he said, oh, some people came here. And I said, why did they come to Carrickcounty? And he said, oh, we are not born. I said, what do you mean born? And he said, oh, we are not born near a Fanguan. And not even a piece was living there anymore. So I said, agus tháinig the dí mis á isteach muinte mar a fó agus mar isteach agus the glandular north, or their colour mabda a rist. And I said, Bon, and then suddenly the Srebrenica thing started. And that was I found that very terrifying, because Srebrenica is near to Treblinka and all those concentration camps in the east, and then I thought, first of all, the men were separated from the boys and the other children, and that was on the Thursday, and the Friday, that isn't at all good, and then Saturday I was saying, well, why are the people of Europe not doing something about this? I mean, after Srebrenica, after the things that happened in the Second World War, where were we not aware of it? And then there was this terrible darkness in me, and suddenly Monday came, and then they said 8,000 people were killed. I mean, in 2 days. 8,000 people were killed. I mean, how can you do that? I mean, I still think that we need an international group of men. I don't care where they come from or what they do, but that are prepared to stand the ground in situations like that, because mostly, I mean, people were afraid of all the things that were happening in Yugoslavia at the time, but nobody came to the help of those 8,000 men. 8,000 men. I mean,
and boys. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you were 14, and I think 14 was the stop, but if you were a year younger, you'd be cut off. And then all your brothers and everything else were taken away. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I still think we need an international group of, fighters, really trained fighters, who would go into a situation like that and stop it.
Yeah, it is. Given everything that is going on now in terms of the world order, it's just
Yeah,
depressing.
absolutely.
So that Srebrenica was happening at that time, and Thomas Murphy was describing to you the was that Cooper? Was he the landlord who came into that area?
Yeah, he was the landlord who came into that area, and he was a nice enough man. I mean, lots of people came from all over the parish, and they had a special ditch, which is called Cooper's Ditch, and the climb. That's how they got to his area, which was on Cornwall and Cornwall, as they were known at the time, and. There was nothing against Cooper as such, but the fact of I had done this in years ago when I was doing classical history, when it was done by Caesar. Caesar said, Homer was the Von Eilmer na Helvetii, agus son Homer so agus see the Veneti agus the Bani in the Mauritian. And we took it as part of the language, Bani Mauritian, and we didn't really realize what it meant until Thomas said to me, "Oh, it'd be an odd bone." And then, so suddenly it dawned on me, how near it was to us. It wasn't something classical.
I always think of Bon and Bon like that. It's funny, here I'm in West Cork in Clonakilty, and a neighbour of mine here who doesn't speak Irish to his knowledge, but he has his just most wonderful Hiberno English that is entirely based on Irish. But he will talk about a Bon field after the grass has been cut, and you see the green grass, you see the white at the bottom is left, and it's Bon. And that's the same Bánaithe, isn't it?
It is the same Bánaithe, yeah. And every single thing that was growing in that part of the world was Bán. Was, like you say,
just raised.
Raised.
Yeah.
Even the little, PSC, small little grubs, even they were cleared out.
That world event, and was hugely impactful on you at that time over that particular number of days you described.
Oh yeah, that was the poem I had called Srebrenica. I spelled it wrong. I put an E in the end when I should have put an A, because two Srebrenica, Dhomhn Srebrenica has an E at the end, but actually it's an A. That's my knowledge of the language was so inferior at the time, but that's what I said. And this happened just a few years ago. I mean, it's happening probably in some part of the world at the moment.
Well, God, indeed, what is happening in Gaza and Iran are just examples.
Oh yeah, terrible. Terrible.
No, just on that, I'm just the most recent piece of yours that I've had experience of was Napershik, your translation.
On the Persians here, yeah. Well, I don't have Greek, and I don't have ancient Greek, especially, but I had a very good English translation, and it was very good, but it wasn't the English we speak nowadays. I mean, it wasn't the English that you and I speak. It was more stilted than that. I was asked to do it in Irish, so I went, and I found it so easy in some ways to use new words in Irish which weren't there before, and so lots of them were of course there often, but it was a real attempt to do something in the modern language. And I did it because of that, and I was happy, very happy the way the actors reacted to it, and especially the director brought in the Sean-nós.
I was going to say the Sean-nós singing was just absolutely it made the whole piece. I thought, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. You see, and that's something of our time. At the time, I was, when we would be going to somewhere on a bus, and we'd all be singing their piece, and they asked me to sing, and I'd sing in Irish because it's what we did at home, It was. I don't know how people took it, but I didn't care.
Um, tell me, I was one of the things I was struck reading about when you open in your selected essays is you were writing a piece, I think, in it about for the New York Times, and you were right because you would just be speaking to your mother, I think, and she had said to you, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm writing this for the New York Times," just casually, as you do, I suppose, and and she said, "Oh, what's it about?" And you said, "Oh, it's about writing in Irish." Well, she said, "Well, I hope you tell him it's mad. That's mad anyway."
Well, that was her attitude
Yeah.
to her language. She was very aware of the fact that she had come from an Irish language background, come into English, done well. Was a mining doctor in England, where she had 8,000 people.
She must have been an extraordinary woman, Noel. I'm just thinking about it now. I mean, that was in the
She was.
1950s. I mean, running a practice in of that scale in Lancashire must have just been an extraordinary accomplishment.
It was for her. Yeah, it was a great attempt to improve herself, and but she thought then that English was the way to go. So the fact that we spoke Irish at home was my father's thing rather than hers.
Yeah, because I got the impression from reading that she would have seen English as the progressive language, let's say the forward-looking language. I mean, and that would have been very similar culturally to my experience. Definitely, we had no on my father's side anyway. Certainly, the language was gone out of the family from a couple of generations ago in this part of the country. But certainly, while there would have been respect for the language and appreciation of the language on a certain level, it would have been seen as kind of a little backward looking
Yeah.
and so on, and progress and so on, and development and so on. Career progression, all of that would have been seen as something through English. And I kind of detected something similar in your mother's attitude. Despite the fact, of course, that she had been an exceptional scholar herself and had gotten a scholarship because of her abilities as Gaeilge, and then went off to study Lice. I think almost despite what she had been taught to do.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just found that very, very interesting because she obviously had this phenomenal accomplishment then in her profession in England. But I presume, did she have to stop that then when she came back to Ireland? Was she able to continue to practice?
Well, I've often wondered about that, because I remember being 3 or something, very small, and coming down the stairs with my nappy, a new nappy, because I needed a change of nappy, and coming down the stairs, and it was huge. There was a big fight between my father and my mother, and there was a big glass kind of cylinder sort of thing, and that was on the ground, and it was broken. And I wondered what happened, and they said, "Oh, nothing. That was not for children to know. It's something that happens between grown-ups." But I think that was the moment at which my father said, "We're going to Ireland." My mother, with her 8,000 people working for her, she was saving them from all sorts of diseases. That was the end. So she had to go back to Ireland, and then she did a bit of work. And my father worked in the main town, but she was more or less pushed out of that gradually, and that must have been a huge break for her. Yeah. It was.
Yeah, because this was something she had expressed her kind of her genius, if you like, in her practice of medicine, and this was something that she no longer was able to identify and express herself, I suppose, really in relation to.
Yeah, and in the same way they wanted me to. Well, why I went to Cork was because Cork had the best school of medicine in Ireland at the time, And at the last minute, I changed my mind. I went into my father was doing an operation out with something simple like a gallbladder or something like this, something small. But there was a big incision on the patient, and I fainted. And I got in. I said to myself, "This is stupid." So I got out again, and I went in again, and then I fainted again. And it's happened 6 times.
It's a good time to find out, I think, you know?
But a good time, because next week I'm going on to study medicine. What I was supposed to do, and at the last minute I changed my mind. I said, "No, I know the words."
Well, thank God for that is all I can say, because you know, what would have happened if you hadn't? The world of medicine's loss is the world of poetry's gain, I think, Nuala, we can say with certainty. But the thing that I'm really interested about there is that there was this idea that Irish was backward looking, old fashioned. And notwithstanding that, though, I suppose your parents did preserve, you know, they used the language, and the language was very important to them, and they sent you back to West Kerry to learn the language. But there was this kind of question about the utility of the language and you know, making your way in the world and stuff like that. And we would maybe associate Irish with pishogri and that kind of thing, right? Yeah. But then you flip that on its head completely, and you actually, you know, it was the pishogri, the mythology, you know, Unsail Ella associated and accessed via the language, and all of that kind of other world, there's the other world, you know, of the things undead, as you describe in that drawer in the National Folklore Collection, but also then the other world and the kind of the psychological archetypes that you use in your poetry around kind of Jungian psychology and so on, and you completely and utterly kind of exploded that thing that had been viewed perhaps maybe as backwards for modern Irish people in the first half of the 20th century.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's not just me, it's a whole generation, and the thing is, the more I hear of Irish spoken and people speaking Irish, I just feel great, because there's no reason why you can't have 2 languages or 3 languages. Many people have 4 now, 4 or 5 languages. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, you see a Chinese man coming up and learning Old Irish. You know, Fanje is my friend, and he's a classical study Old Irish people, and I say it's wonderful with all the other languages. Why can't we learn more of it, you know?
Because I suppose it comes with such it is the kind of the vehicle, let's say, for this extraordinary culture that we're all so proud of and associate with.
Well, yeah. No, it is the language itself is the main instigator of all of that. All of that comes afterwards.
Yeah.
The way Irish people speak English even is an Irish way. Yes. You know, they don't say hello or whatever they say deal with, and then this is a completely different word, and it doesn't matter. People are used to it. You know, it's normal. You know, when you think about it, it's very big. Like deal with is a form of a blessing that you're not just saying hello. You're saying, you're adding blessings to people. I mean, that in itself is wonderful.
Yeah, it's almost like a litany that grows as you go back and forth. There's this amplification of the blessing. Yeah,
there is, and you know, you can go on forever.
Yeah, I think of litanies in that beautiful poem Im Malia an Schleife, and you have almost like a litany there of the place names that you recite.
Yeah, that are kind to me.
Yeah,
that I am kind to them. And always, when I look at the signs on the road, I always look at the Irish first, and then I look at the English. I say, "Oh, I see that that's that's a translation of the Irish, and this is wrong and that's wrong. But that's the way it
Yeah.
is. The world is full of mishmashes. So long as we know, it's no bother at all.
And tell me, I was just very interested in, particularly it was timely given the fact that we were having this conversation. I saw a piece on Gabriel Rosenstock in the Sunday Independent just passed, and I know the poor man is very unwell, and I think there is a documentary about him. I think it's due to air on TG or on Radical Girls on perhaps this coming Easter Sunday. And he just his take on the situation that he's in and so on was extraordinarily kind of inspirational. Really, I just wondered, have you, and of course, you and he are the two remaining of the Inti poets. Poor Michael Davitt and Liam O'Murra have since passed on. Have you maintained a connection with the other poets?
Not really. Well, since the last stroke, which was in Poland, I haven't been among the
Of
others.
course.
Because basically I can't walk with a certain difficulty. I can walk a certain amount, and then my right leg just doesn't move. And because of that I have kept away from a lot of things, and I'm quite annoyed about that, really.
And tell me just on language, do you get an opportunity to go back to the Gaeltacht? Do you get a chance to go back to West Kerry?
Not as much as I'd like to. Get my right leg better, and then when I can walk a bit, then we'll do more. Well, of course I can't drive, which is terrible, because I was driving up and down the country and here, there, and everywhere, and now I'm not able to do that. So I have to expect people to come to me that talk Irish,
I'm also just smiling to myself and thinking about, because I think I remember you describing in an interview with Theo Dorgan some time ago how one of the pieces of recognition that you particularly enjoyed was going to the local super value and people doing the leaving certificate seeing you and wanted to get you to autograph their super value bags.
Well, that was when I was go out more. Yeah, I've always thought that was crazy, but it doesn't matter what language you're speaking. But if it does happen that they like it, well, I'm very happy for them. Yeah, that means they have two languages too.
Yeah. No, it's extraordinary, Nuala, and I mean, you have done so much for the language, and for those people now who are, part of that resurgence now. But finally, just on one other aspect to it, I think I'd like to just touch on, because I mean, you spoke repeatedly about how you felt, let's say, that you were doubly kind of, if like, marginalized because you were writing in Irish and you were also writing as a woman in Ireland at that particular time.
Yeah.
Would you mind? What are your reflections on that now, looking back? Because those were two very, very important kind of themes, I think, for you when you're writing always.
That's true. And there was a time when they used to bother me terribly, but I'm not bothered anymore, because I see this famous Italian, the resurgence of the language. I mean, it's everywhere now, and that makes me so happy. You see it on the buses, and you see it on trains, and you see it everywhere now. A bit of Irish, and the fact that people now speak Irish like some people speak some other languages. I remember once going to Wales. And I got off the train, and this very Indian-looking man was speaking Welsh quite normally. And I thought, isn't that wonderful? If we do that at home, wouldn't it be wonderful?
Yeah, I was The best instance of it I've had recently is listening to Nuala Ní Dhomhnaill, and there was a young lad there who had been forced to move, obviously leave Ukraine, and he is living in Cork, possibly in Ballynaherterig, and he was speaking the most beautiful West Kerry Irish. I mean, and this Ukrainian lad who would just come here as a kid, forced out of his own country because of the war there, and for him speaking Irish as the language of his local community was the most natural thing in the world, and it was just a beautiful thing to listen to.
Yeah, it is. It is. You feel so happy about that,
Yeah. Nuala, just as we come to the end of our time together, and thank you so much for the time you've spent with us. I'd like to just ask you a question that I ask all of the guests here on the show, and it is, why have you done everything that you have done? You've devoted your life to writing in the language, something that you've described as in Keshantagan as putting your hope kind of on the stream of fortune and where it might end up. Why have you done all of that? What has motivated you in relation to everything that you have done in the language and for the language throughout your life?
Well, the most important thing is for me the discovery of more things that are not in English or in the English-speaking world. And then I become aware about myself that there is a hole where something should be. I mean, I'm good at other languages too, and I speak Turkish almost like a Turk. And mind you, since I've come to Ireland, I speak less of it. But it's the sense of discovery of new things, of new ways of saying things, things like that. The sense of discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Was the most important thing. The Gaeilge Bíorla dictionary is my love, and I discover more and more things, like the English version of the Persians that I did. It was much easier doing it in Irish, much easier. Just leapt out of me. It was wonderful.
Because I think you described that. I think when I even remember you describing writing as a teenager in secondary school, and you were writing, and you started writing poetry in English, and then suddenly switched to Irish, and that this was you found suddenly, wait a minute, this is much better.
That was the case. My just felt more real to me. Somehow it was this, like I say, this hole in my middle that began to fill up more. The more I spoke it, and the more I manifested what was there, the happier I was. And it's to this day the same. The more I speak Irish to people, everyone says, "Oh, you're in such good mood, Nuala. What's wrong?" That's what's wrong. I get a chance to be more of a person than I do
Wonderful
in any other language.
Wonderful. We become. I mean, you're filling this hole, but we become more whole in by speaking the language. It's just such a wonderful image. Nuala a cara buenas ansult as an scéal a Ryan Tulin, gur raibh míle maith agat faoi sin a berbua agus banna a cara.
Gur míle maith.
Thanks for listening. Gur raibh míle maith agat as a bheith éisteacht. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would really appreciate your feedback and would be eternally grateful if you would follow, rate and review the show. Please also be sure to sign up at thelanguagequestion.com/resources to get your free valuable learning resources and to stay up to date with upcoming episodes, guests and to receive exclusive content. Slán Tá.